The babysitter's camera. I always thought of myself as the cautious parent, not paranoid, just careful. So when my partner and I finally hired a babysitter, we did what every responsible couple in the neighborhood whispered about. We installed a nanny cam. Not because we didn't trust her, we did. She came recommended, soft-spoken, polite, but trust these days feels more like a dare than a guarantee. And I wasn't about to gamble with my child. At first, it was comforting. We'd check in from our phones while out to dinner, while sitting in traffic, while pretending to watch a movie. Each time, the same soothing image, the sitter humming a lullaby, rocking gently, feeding with careful patience, bottles warmed right on schedule, diaper changes handled with almost military precision. Nothing alarming, nothing strange, just the quiet relief of knowing our baby was safe. But safety, now that's a tricky word. It doesn't mean what you think it does. Safety is fragile. It's the glass dome you place over a snow globe, and one wrong tap can crack it wide open. One night, somewhere between the appetizer and dessert, I pulled out my phone. Just habit. A quick glance to reassure myself. But what I saw wasn't soothing. It wasn't ordinary. The sitter wasn't looking at the baby, she was looking at the camera. Not glancing, staring. Her head tilted ever so slightly, her lips curled into a smile that was both warm and wrong. The kind of smile that doesn't invite you in, but dares you to step closer. And she didn't blink. That was the first time I felt it, that ripple beneath the surface of the ordinary. The faint suggestion that something had slipped out of place. The night still felt normal on the outside. Clinking glasses, laughter from the next table, traffic sighing past the window. But inside me, in the marrow of my bones, something whispered, "You are not safe." She stopped looking at the baby and looked at the lens. Not a nervous flick, not a casual check, a sustained, deliberate stare that made the pixels feel like eyes. Her smile was patient, too patient, like someone waiting for applause that never came. At first I thought it was a trick of the feed, latency, a frozen frame. I tapped the screen. It moved. She moved. The baby fussed and she hummed, but every few seconds she turned that smile to the camera and whispered, soft, almost tender. Words that were not for the crib. The first whisper named our street. The second named the tattoo on my shoulder I never talk about. The third named the exact place I'd hidden the spare key after that night when the lock jammed. Small things, private things. Things you only tell in the dark to stop them from rattling around in your head. The camera was a mouth, and she was feeding it. We tried to pin it down. Maybe she'd overheard us in the interview. Maybe she was close to someone who knew us. Maybe she had a social media stalker resume where she collected other people's data like baseball cards. Rational explanations are comforting until they aren't. Ours wore down like wallpaper in a damp room. I started timing the whispers. They came at predictable intervals. 3 minutes, 7, then 10. Always when the baby's breathing deepened, as if the sitter had learned to read the rhythm and wanted the audience to be lulled. I replayed clips. I slowed them down. Sometimes the smile would slide into laughter so quiet it was a scraping sound on glass. I stopped leaving my phone on the table. I began checking pockets for cameras in the house, on shelves and smoke detectors, under stuffed animals. I found nothing. My hands shook every time I reached behind a picture frame. We called her once, asked a normal question about feeding times. She answered like a professional. Polite, efficient, nothing odd. But later, when I watched the footage, she mouthed the words we'd said into the camera, as if translating us to someone else. As if the camera was on the other side of the room, and we were the ones being watched. Sleep became a suspended thing between naps. I watched the live feed like a man watching a slow train crash and hoping it will stop before reaching the bridge. Each whisper pulled at a thread inside me. Each reveal made the house feel smaller, the walls closer, as if the camera's eye had built a ladder straight into our private life and climbed down. The real terror was not that she knew things. It was the certainty that someone or something had invited itself to listen, and now it was smiling back. Then came the moment that split our lives in two. We were watching the feed, dinner half-eaten, wine untouched. The sitter was humming, her voice a lullaby that was more drone than song. She rocked gently, swaying side to side. Then, mid-note, she stopped, tilted her head, looked into the camera, and without breaking eye contact, without blinking, she lifted the baby, out of frame. At first I thought she was adjusting. A bottle, a blanket, something mundane. But the lullaby cut off. The camera stayed fixed on her face, her smile. The frame held nothing but her stare. My heart sprinted while the feed refused to move. No cries, no soft coos, just the faint sound of footsteps echoing from somewhere beyond the nursery walls. Then, silence. I didn't think. I didn't breathe. We bolted from the restaurant, knocking chairs, ignoring the waiter's startled shout. We drove like maniacs, headlights carving frantic tunnels through the night. Red lights blurred into accusations. Horns chased us down the road. My partner's hands shook so hard they dropped the keys twice before ignition caught. Every second was an eternity. Every turn, a crime against time. My pulse roared in my ears louder than the engine. When we skidded into the driveway, the house stood calm. Lights glowing warm, inviting, like nothing had shifted, like everything was fine. But we knew. We tore through the front door, shoes skidding across hardwood. The nursery door slammed open so hard it cracked against the wall. The crib was empty. No sitter, no baby. Just the mobile still spinning slowly, playing its tinny, cheerful tune. The camera sat high in the corner, lens glinting. Watching, always watching. I turned to it, rage boiling past fear, and for a split second, before I could blink, I swore the screen on my phone showed us. Not the room, not the crib, us. Standing there, mouths open, eyes wild, and behind us, someone smiling. Police swarmed the house, radios crackling, boots thudding against the hardwood. Red and blue lights bled through the curtains, painting the walls like a warning we were too late to heed. They pushed us into the living room, sat us down, notebooks ready. Questions came sharp and fast. Where did you last see her? What time did you leave? Who is this sitter? Do you have her full name, her number? We pointed at the camera. We begged them to check the feed. Look at the tape. Our baby was gone, and that was the proof. That was everything. One of them hooked the nanny cam up to his laptop, rewound, slowed the footage. We crowded around the screen, my throat raw from explaining the same terror in a dozen ways. They hit play, and what we saw hollowed me out. There was no sitter, no swaying, no lullaby, no smile, just me. Sitting in the nursery, alone, in the dark, singing softly to an empty crib. My arms cradled nothing. My lips whispered lullabies into silence. The camera caught me rocking in rhythm, but the baby wasn't there. Wasn't ever there. I reeled back, bile rising. My partner cried out, shoving the laptop away like it had burned them. The officers exchanged looks, quick, skeptical glances that said everything. To them, we weren't witnesses. We were suspects. Worse, we were unstable. I tried to protest, tried to explain, but every frame they rewound showed the same thing. Me alone. The nursery stripped bare of the woman we had sworn was there. Stripped bare of the child I would have died to protect. The baby's toys lay scattered, the bottle still warm on the dresser, all signs of a life that should have filled the room. But the footage insisted otherwise, rewriting reality second by second. Whispers spread through the cops, terms like false report, psych eval, sleep deprivation. They said stress makes the mind conjure things. They said fatigue bends memory. They said cameras don't lie, but I could still hear it. That lullaby, soft, broken, not mine, hers. And somewhere behind the static hum of the empty room, I swore I heard the faint sound of a baby crying. That night, I sat in the living room with the monitor still in my hand, fingers trembling against the glass. The police had left, their sirens fading into the distance, their words echoing louder than any sound. Cameras don't lie. My partner refused to look at me, hovering in the hallway like a shadow too afraid to draw near. But I couldn't look away from the screen. The scariest part wasn't the disappearance. It wasn't even the sight of myself where I shouldn't have been. No, what hollowed me out was the sound, that faint lullaby, still playing, still looping, threading through the static like a ghost that refused to die. I leaned closer, pressing my ear to the cold hum of the monitor, and my stomach turned to stone. The crib, which only hours ago had been declared empty, wasn't silent anymore. There were breaths, soft, steady, the kind of sound a baby makes when sleeping deeply. And underneath it, a voice, not hers, not the sitter's, not anyone's but mine. My own lullaby sung back at me from the dark. I dropped the monitor like it burned, but the sound lingered in the air, as if the walls themselves had learned the tune and weren't finished with it yet. Now I don't sleep. I can't. Every time I close my eyes, I hear the rocking chair creak, The hush of a lullaby that isn't mine anymore. Sometimes, when I pass the nursery, I see the mobile spinning on its own, slow and patient. And once, just once, I swear I saw myself still in that chair, cradling something I couldn't see. People say cameras don't lie. Maybe that's true. Maybe they just show us a truth we weren't meant to look at. And if that's the case, then my baby's still here. Or maybe I never was. If this story left you unsettled, do me a favor. Tap the like button to help this video reach more people who crave stories that linger long after they end. Subscribe for daily content. You'll never miss a tale. And share this with someone who loves a good scare. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. There's another story waiting for you right there on your screen. I'll see you back tomorrow, or maybe you'll see me first. The motel room mirror. Cheap motels have a smell that never leaves your clothes. Stale cigarettes, mildew, and something sour that clings to the carpet like regret. I'd been on the road too long, chasing a job that barely paid enough for gas, let alone comfort, and this was the only place with a vacancy. The neon sign buzzed outside the window, flashing vacancy like a bad joke, its red glow leaking into the room every few seconds. The bed sagged in the middle, the sheets felt damp, and the AC unit rattled with every breath of air it pushed. It wasn't luxury, but I'd stayed in worse. At least, that's what I told myself. But then I noticed it. The mirror. It hung directly across from the bed, larger than anything else in the room, framed in a tacky gold trim. Too large for a place like this, too spotless compared to the grime everywhere else. I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at it, and the longer I looked, the stranger it seemed. My reflection didn't feel right. At first, I thought it was just exhaustion, my eyes playing tricks on me after too many hours on the highway. But the details nagged at me. My reflection was breathing heavier than I was. Its chest rose and fell out of rhythm with mine. And once, just once, it smiled, even though my lips hadn't moved. I laughed nervously and turned away. Sleep deprivation, I told myself, stress. But deep down I felt it, like a splinter under the skin. Something wasn't right. That night, instead of sleeping, I pulled out the small hidden camera I used for work. I angled it at the mirror, just to prove to myself I was imagining things, just to have evidence, one way or another. And as I hit record, I whispered a thought I didn't want to believe. What if it isn't a mirror at all? At first, the recording looked ordinary. Me moving through the motions, setting a battered suitcase on the chair, turning the TV to a static channel because the remote batteries were dead. I drank cheap coffee from a paper cup, checked my phone until the screen blurred, then crawled into bed. The camera caught all of that. Boring, exhausted stuff. The kind of footage that proves you are exactly where you say you are. A tired man in a tired room. Then the time code hit 3:17 a.m. and everything changed. The glass didn't simply reflect me anymore. On the other side of it, a man stood where my reflection should have been. Not a double, not a trick of light. He had the wrong kind of stillness, the patient calm of someone who's been waiting a long time. He breathed, he watched, he wrote. He wrote in a little black book, tiny, deliberate strokes. The camera zoom picked up the way his hand hovered over the page before it moved, like a hunter watching a twitch in the grass. The page snapped closed once, twice. Then he tapped the spine with a finger and looked up, directly at the camera, as if he knew it was there. I did what any rational man would do. I ran. The front desk kid blinked like the world had been switched off and back on. "We don't keep people in rooms," he said, then smiled. "Lots of folks stay, boss. Maybe you're dreaming." He handed me a key like a bandage. I left the camera with him, stupid, proud, desperate, and he promised to check the tape. He didn't. He shrugged later, said the footage had cleared up on its own. The word felt like a lie with soft edges. The next night, the man was closer. The mirror no longer matched the geometry of the room. He stood where the dresser should be on his side, but the dresser in my room stayed empty. Sometimes he would trace shapes in the condensation, write letters that vanished when I blinked. Once he lifted his head and mouthed my name. No sound, just the shape of my name. My throat closed around rational explanations that couldn't breathe. I started leaving lights on. I positioned the camera differently. I walked the hallway at midnight, listening for the scrape of shoes, the hush of other people's doors closing. The motel hummed with ordinary things. The vending machine grinding, a shower running 2 doors down, but nothing that explained the handwriting in the glass. My phone battery drained faster, like the room was a little vacuum sucking power. My calls to friends went to voicemail with the polite voice that suggested everything was fine. Management offered coupons and sympathetic shrugs. The clerk said I could switch rooms, but I refused. Moving meant admitting defeat, and also, what if it followed me? The black book began to show up in dreams. In those dreams, the man's pen sketched maps, lines that led from the mirror to places I knew, to a street name I recognized, to a door I sometimes thought I'd seen in my childhood. When I woke, there would be a faint graphite smear on my palm, like I had been touching the other side without meaning to. Each small detail stacked on the last until normal life felt dangerous and shabby. The mirror was no longer an object in a room. It was an invitation, and I was the only one on the list. I didn't think, I acted. My pulse was hammering so loud it drowned out the rattle of the air unit, the buzzing neon, the very breath in my lungs. I hurled the motel's ice bucket into the mirror with everything I had. The sound was not glass. It was louder, deeper, like a scream cut short. Shards cascaded across the carpet, catching the red glow from the window in sharp, jagged flashes. Behind it was no wall, no insulation, no beams. A corridor stretched out impossibly narrow, tiled in a faded white gone sickly yellow with time. The air rolled out at me, stale and damp, smelling like mildew and breath. The walls were streaked with handprints. Footprints stained the floor, fresh ones, too fresh. Some led away into the darkness. Some led straight toward me, stopping just at the broken frame. My stomach turned to water. I could feel the weight of eyes that weren't there, that shouldn't be there. I crouched, fingers trembling, and there it was, the notebook. Black cover, pages fanned open like it had been dropped in a hurry. I picked it up against every shred of instinct. The paper was damp, smudged, but the words were sharp. Dozens of pages filled with neat, obsessive handwriting. Notes about me, my arrival time, my coffee order, how I scratched my neck when I lied, every single detail of my life. And then, on the very last page, the ink still glistening wet. He's about to find this hallway. The pen was still warm, as if it had just been set down. My breath came in shallow bursts. The corridor seemed to pulse, the shadows inside shifting like they were alive. I wanted to run, to slam the dresser over the hole and never look back. But something deeper pushed me forward. Anger, terror, the need to know. I took a step inside. The tiles creaked beneath my weight as though no one had ever walked them before. Yet the footprints told another story, a story that wasn't over. And then, behind me, I heard it, a single breath, ragged and deliberate, just past the broken frame. Too close, I spun around and realized I wasn't alone in the corridor anymore. I didn't dare look back as I bolted, the notebook slipping from my hand, the tiles slicked beneath my feet. My bag, my wallet, my whole life. I left it all behind in that room with its broken mouth of glass. I burst into the humid night, lungs burning, heart like a drum too fast to keep a beat. Barefoot on gravel, down the empty stretch of road, until the neon sign was nothing but a memory buzzing in my skull. By the time I stumbled into the diner, I must have looked like hell. The waitress eyed me like a stray dog, wild, shaking, dripping sweat. The place smelled of burnt bacon and black coffee, a strange comfort. I collapsed into a booth, ordered nothing, and just sat, listening to the clatter of dishes, the scratch of an old jukebox, trying to convince myself that this was real life again. The cops didn't come quick. I must have sat there for hours before the red and blue glow cut across the diner's windows. 2 officers stepped in, one older and heavy, the other young and yawning. They listened to my story with the kind of expression people wear when they've heard too many lies in one night. Still, they drove me back. The motel looked smaller, emptier, like it had already forgotten me. My room door swung open, the mirror shards still scattered across the floor, but when the officers pried at the wall where the corridor had been, just plaster, insulation, dust. No hallway, no footprints, no notebook, nothing but a broken mirror and a nervous man babbling about things that didn't exist. Stress, one of them said, clapping my shoulder. Fatigue. These roadside places get to people. The younger one glanced at me with pity, as if I was more dangerous to myself than anything in that room. They told me to collect what I could, sleep it off, maybe see a doctor. I laughed, sharp, humorless, because there was nothing left to collect. Still, even as they filed their report and brushed me off, I felt it. The air in that room was wrong. Too heavy, too full of silence that pressed against the ears. And when I stepped outside, I could swear the shards of glass still reflected something moving, something deeper than just me. I tried. For weeks, I tried to fold the memory into a neat, explainable shape. I told myself exhaustion rearranges perception. I told myself roadside motels are little theaters of bad dreams. I tried to sleep with the lights on. I tried to move back in with an old friend. I took sleeping pills and read until my eyes blurred. I went to a therapist once and felt foolish the moment the words left my mouth. People smiled politely and offered phrases like, "It will pass." The world kept insisting that the only thing here worth fearing was my imagination. Then yesterday, a plain brown envelope waited in my mailbox. No stamp, no return address, only my name. Inside, a single flash drive sat in a smear of coffee. I wanted to burn the thing, to melt it under a lighter and forget that I had ever seen it. I did not. I plugged it in. One video file, one name, one timestamp. Last night. My bedroom filled the screen. My bed held me asleep, mouth slightly open, the ceiling fan turning above. The camera angle was impossible unless someone had watched me breathe from the corner of my room. For a moment, I sat on the edge of my chair and watched myself sleep like I was watching someone else. Then beneath the soft scrape of my breath, there came another sound. A pen, scratching, furiously. A hand writing in a book somewhere just out of frame. The sound threaded under my inhalations like a second pulse. Then the pen stopped. There was a soft tap like a finger on paper. And then so close to the microphone that I felt it in my chest, the sound of a name being formed with lips, not spoken, written in the air. I could not tell if the sound was a whisper or the rustle of ink. The file ended there. I have not slept since. I do not trust mirrors. I wake sometimes convinced I hear graphite on glass. I change motels and houses and hotels, and still the feeling follows me like a shadow that has learned my shape. I left the job I was chasing. I left most of my things behind. I keep the flash drive in my pocket like a small hot coal. If you think this is a tale about a broken mirror, you are wrong. It is a tale about being observed, cataloged, written into. It is a tale about how the world can make space for you and then decide to keep you as someone else's note. If you like this story, please like the video to help the channel grow. Subscribe for daily stories and share this with someone who loves a good chill. There is another video recommended on your screen right now that you should watch. Thanks for listening and watching. I will see you back here tomorrow. The apartment above me. You ever notice how silence in an apartment isn't really silence? It's full of creaks, thuds, and scratches that crawl down the walls like ghosts with dirty fingernails. At first, I laughed it off. Rats, I told myself. City living comes with company you don't invite. And I believed that lie, or at least I wanted to. Most nights I came home bone tired. My job kept me on my feet long past sunset, and by the time I trudged up 3 flights of stairs to my shoebox apartment, all I wanted was sleep. My room smelled faintly of mildew, old plaster sweating through cracked paint, and my bed sagged in the middle like it had given up too. Still, it was mine, my little fortress of solitude. But then came the noises. Not random, not chaotic, the kind of scratching that had rhythm, a pattern, always from the ceiling, always above my bed. Sometimes it sounded like something dragging across the floor. Other times, a faint tapping, like fingernails testing for weak spots. I told myself I was imagining it. Stress, fatigue. But the timing gnawed at me. It wasn't at dinner or in the early morning rush. No, the sound started at exactly 1:13 a.m. every night. And every night I'd lie there, eyes open in the dark, tracing the lines of my ceiling, waiting. Funny thing is, I never saw anyone moving in upstairs. The apartment above me was supposed to be empty. The landlord swore he'd locked it up months ago, waiting for renovations. That's when the unease burrowed deep into my chest. If no one lived there, then what was pacing above me, watching, waiting for me to fall asleep? The night it got too loud, I set up a hidden camera, a cheap one wired to my phone, just to prove the landlord wrong. I expected whiskers, a tail, maybe a rat nest spilling insulation. What I caught instead froze me. There was a man. He wasn't supposed to be there, crawling through the vents, limbs twisting like a spider's. He'd lower his face to the slats and watch me sleep. I told myself it was a glitch, a trick of the light. But the footage kept coming, him whispering words I couldn't make out, him standing over my bed, his shadow stretching across my chest like a coffin lid. My stomach knotted every night, waiting for the feed to light up, waiting for him. I started taking small measures. Wedge a chair under the doorknob, move the mattress a foot to the left, leave a lamp on all night. Each precaution felt ridiculous and necessary. Neighbors shrugged. Old building. The landlord called it structural settling. But then my phone buzzed with another video at 1:13 a.m., and the man wasn't alone in that clip. There were other sounds, humming, voices maybe, threading through the vents. Sleep became tactical. I measured time in breaths and camera battery percentages. I stopped answering calls after dark. I ate at strange hours to avoid being home when the ceiling sang. The apartment felt less like a home and more like a trap with a ceiling that watched. One night, the feed showed him placing a small parcel on the floor above my head. He tapped the slats 3 times, slow then fast, then left. My hands went numb. I rewound and froze frames. The package was brown paper, tied with string, no label, no name. I wanted to confront the landlord, to rip open the trapdoor and demand keys. He shrugged with calm. "No one's been up there," he said. "I'll check." He didn't. He never did. The videos multiplied. Each clip altered something in me. I walked tense, listening for rhythms in the pipes. I dreamed of slats opening and faces peering through. The city hummed outside, oblivious, while my ceiling learned a language I did not know. I stopped inviting friends over. Even laughter felt risky. Every sound became a sentence the ceiling wrote about me. I was unreadable. And then the camera captured the whisper that sounded like my name. And then one night, it happened live. I woke to my phone vibrating in my hand. The camera had motion alerts. The feed showed him closer than ever. His face pressed against the lens. His eyes met mine through the screen. And then he smiled. The video froze. That smile burned into my head, teeth bright in the dark. My chest locked. I called the cops with shaking hands. They told me to stay put, don't move. They said they were on their way. I watched the live feed like a man watching a slow storm. The image stuttered, then cleared. He mouthed something I could not hear and tapped the glass twice, slow then fast. I could see the wet glint at his mouth. He was close enough to fog the lens. Minutes blurred. The doorbell never rang. The hallway stayed mute. My breath synced to the camera's clicks. Then the feed showed him in my room. He stood by my bedside. He did not rush. He moved like someone arranging a cruel altar. He reached into his coat and produced the brown parcel. He set it by my bed and tied the string with careful fingers. He tapped the package twice. The sound matched the rhythm that had haunted my ceiling. The tapping made something in my chest tilt. I pounded the floor with my heel until the wood groaned. My hands fumbled for keys. I told myself I would fling the door open and catch him, that courage would arrive on cue. When I grabbed the knob, a hand landed on the other side. Flat, patient. It pressed, testing the lock, feeling for me. The wood shivered. He spoke once, not through the camera now, but through the door, voice low and warm like rot. He said my name and the word folded the room. My choice sharpened. Run into the hall and into unknown danger, or stay and face the thing that had mapped my nights. I swung the door open. The hand withdrew like a shadow sliding back into plaster. The hallway was empty. No shoes, no figure. The parcel at my feet trembled as if alive. The smile on my phone's frozen frame felt less like a tease and more like a sentence. I had acted. There was no turning back. Outside, the city hummed on, unaware my ceiling kept learning my name each night. They stormed in, flashlights slicing through the shadows of my apartment. Boots thudded against the warped floorboards, radios crackled, doors swung open. They checked everything. The vents, the crawl spaces, the attic that hadn't seen light in decades. Nothing. No footprints, no fingerprints, no sign that anyone had ever been there. One officer lingered by the door, his eyes scanning me instead of the room. "Maybe you need rest," he said. His tone was clipped, rehearsed, the kind they use when filing you away as unstable. The others gave polite nods, then packed up their lights, their questions, their brief promise of safety, and left. The door closed behind them with a finality that made my ribs tighten. I stood alone in the aftermath, staring at the brown parcel still sitting by my bed. They hadn't even taken it as evidence. I touched it once, just enough to feel the string tighten, then pulled back. I couldn't bring myself to open it. The next day, I showed the footage to friends, desperate for someone to believe. But the files were gone, replaced by static, snow and hiss, like the camera itself had been scrubbed clean. They shook their heads, sympathy curdling into distance. "You're not sleeping," one said. "It's in your head." They stopped coming over. Calls went unanswered. Nights grew longer. I started carrying the weight of disbelief like an anchor. The camera was still there though, and every night at 1:13 the alert buzzed. Only now, nothing showed. Just black screens that flickered at the edges, as if something crouched just out of frame. I tried sleeping at motels, crashing on couches, but the scratching always followed. Different ceilings, same hour, same rhythm. The package stayed on my nightstand no matter where I went, as though it traveled with me, mocking me. I began to wonder if the man had ever been flesh and blood, or if I had awakened something that belonged not to the building, but to me. The cops dismissed me. My friends abandoned me. And every night, the ceiling waited, patient knowing, while I listened for my name whispered through the plaster. That night, I swore I'd stay awake. Coffee, lights on, knife on the nightstand, but somewhere between heartbeats, I slipped under. When I woke, I didn't wake to silence. I woke to a whisper from the vent, curling into my ear. This time, it said my name. It was closer. The parcel lay where I had left it, string slack. I untied it with fingers that shook. Inside was one photograph, the ceiling taken from below. The slats gaped like a mouth. Something pale leaned through, fingers long and too neat. I could not tell if it was face or shadow. Above, the tapping began, slow, slow, fast. The rhythm I had counted like prayers. I climbed the stairs, breath shallow, each step sounding like a summons. The hallway smelled of old dust and a faint sweetness I could not place. The trapdoor was heavier than it looked. I knocked. No reply. I had rehearsed courage in the dark. The real thing was smaller and colder. I pried at a slat until it yielded, and a hand slipped out, pulling away as if caught mid-gesture. Shoulders hunched inside the ceiling peered back, too narrow, wrong in the angles. It regarded me like someone reading an unfamiliar book. It did not attack. It tapped the slat 3 times, slow, slow, fast, then mime tying string. A parcel appeared on its side and then on mine. The motion was methodical, almost respectful. It studied me with a patience that was not quite human. I felt exposed, named, and cataloged. I left 4 days later. I packed the parcel without opening the rest. I moved to a room without vents, with windows that let the city in and the building out. Sleep came back in ragged pieces. Sometimes at 1:13 a.m., my phone would buzz like old machinery, and I would wake, waiting to see if the world had noticed me. Mostly it had not. Sometimes when rain writes little murder notes on the glass, I think about that figure in the slats. I think it wanted something simple, to be seen, to leave a mark, to turn my nights into a language both of us could understand. If you like this story, hit like to support the channel, subscribe for daily content, and share with someone who loves a good scare. Thank you for watching. There is another video on your screen. See you back tomorrow.